Is a really good energy here. It's nice to have the players back. I was just headset off listening to them banter before, and they're just, I think, excited to be back here and just hopefully ready to play a good game of League of Legends.
Speaking of that energy, one of my favorite things of last week was seeing the player cams of the FlyQuest players prior to the draft starting, because they had that trickle of a smile on their face saying, we know what's coming. They don't know, though, and it ended up being that 2-0 start that not many were expecting, but here we are getting into the draft.
Yeah, there was a lot of banter in the pregame lobby about how many smites there would be in this game. Notably, FlyQuest played the smite top twice last week, once with Janna, the second time with Karma, even though Janna was up. We'll see if that's what they're going to continue to hang their hat on, because that strategy is pretty impossible to ban out with the number of possible enchanters, or not even enchanters you can take top lane and do a low farm smite strategy with.
So interesting when thinking about the mindset behind those type of strategies as well. Obviously, we're starting to see it more prominent among other teams too. But when speaking to the players after the interviews, we want some of that surprise factor. So are they going to continue leaning into that or in another direction? TSM locked their jungler first though. Lee Sin in the hands of Spica, and then over for FlyQuest, a common prioritization to get Jinx up there.
Yeah, and so it is going to vary a little bit. The last time they did a red side smite game, they actually picked Janna on 2. They obviously could still do it, but I think Janna, Tom Kench Jinx is a little different than I would expect, because I'd want to see Engage on a team with smite top. So maybe we see a standard game, but still plenty of draft to play out.
I do love that variation with that smite, having Aphromoo on the Leona last time being so key in a lot of that, compared to when you first saw this coming through solo queue and a lot of double up of the enchanters and beyond. Over for TSM side though, Tactical very comfortable on the Aphelios, and this bot lane is one that I'm definitely looking at because of what they were able to showcase in the mechanics and their aggression early.
Yeah, and I think with them being 0-2, they want to have a much better showing. Aphelios versus Jinx is really a skill matchup at this point. It's what these guys have been playing against each other pretty much every game of Champions Queue that recently launched this week on Monday, and these guys have been grinding it. But unless one of those champs is banned or something changes in a patch, that's a bottom lane matchup we're going to be seeing a lot more of.
Interestingly enough, Jose de Oro and Shenyi were in a game in Champions Queue together last night.
Yeah.
It was Jose on the J4. You had the Rel come out, and they did pull off the W, but only one could get the W today, unfortunately, for somebody.
Yeah, I know they hovered Rel before going into the second phase of bans. Sometimes that's because they would consider actually locking it. Sometimes it's just debate. I would like to see it again, actually, from Shenyi. I thought the Rel that we saw from him, I believe it was in lock-in, was actually pretty good, but particularly it can be good against Tom Kench, since the Rel Q, the champion just does so much, but the Rel Q actually does break shields, which can be very good against the Tom Kenchi.
A nice layer up there, and then obviously when you're looking at a player like Shenyi that is so prominent on those engages, got a lot of really good Magnet Storms in that first game last week, just couldn't quite follow up with the rest of the team in the later portions of the game.
And it's banned, so much for that one. I like the Orianna and the Corki bans from here as well. A lot of times it's the Victor Corki trade, but you know, the immediate hover by FlyQuest, I think, is what they're going to lock in. It's going to push them a little bit more towards early game in mid lane, but I think Zoe can get an early push on Victor and then still have the one-shot potential later in the game, even if Zoe will lose side lane push in the mid to late game.
And while players like Kumo have ushered in that wave of flexibility for the rest of the team, depending on what they want to go, we have seen Takui on this pick of Zoe multiple times. Obviously making a splash over in lock-in, a good old steal to get everybody's hearts pumping, but just some great laning and knowing exactly when to poke and lock down the opponents. But we'll have to see what TSM end up responding with in these final moments of the lock-in, and it's the Rakan that Shenyi will be bringing through.
Yeah, with the Thresh and the Rel bans, it's not too surprising. You generally don't want to place something like Nautilus into Tom Kench, because you'll often kind of commit yourself to a fight and then just get murdered. So the Rakan being a little more in and out, I like, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be the strongest at getting push in the lane early.
And with Renekton going into the hands of Huni here, I know the desk was talking about wanting to see him pop off, want a little more from him. How you feel on the subject?
I'd like to see pretty much anyone on TSM step up more other than Kaido, and I do think Hootie is a person that can have a solo carry performance. This is a trap card, though, if the Enchanter gets picked by FlyQuest on 5 right here, but they're going to go for something standard and just go for tank team fighting.
Classic Ornn for the team fight. Kumo, plenty of experience on that one, as many top laners tend to do, so a lot of that power relying on Johnson later on in the game. Both drafts lined up. What do you make of them, Jet?
They're very similar, actually, in terms of how they're going to look to line up late-game team fighting. They both have hyper-carry ADs. With the Ornn and Jarvan being on the side of FlyQuest, they're going to have a stronger front line. But TSM is going to be needing to play a little bit more from the flanks with Renekton, Lee Sin, Rakan. So, yeah, kind of the more I look at it, FlyQuest is going to be able to outrange and have better 5v5 team fighting. And I think TSM is going to have to get a bit of an advantage early or be very creative in the late game to win this one.
Which lays really nicely into some of the strengths we saw from them prior, because Kobe, during the cast of that latter FlyQuest game, saying they look more coordinated than the team has looked in 2 years. And then TSM finding those advantages when making the plays earlier, specifically in the 2v2 and beyond. So whichever team can index into those strengths might be the one to come out with the overall victory.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also think, obviously, just being 1 week in to the LCS split, there's so much unexplored. So much can change in a week. We saw already today Immortals, a team that many people were pronouncing dead on arrival, take a game off the defending champs 100 Thieves. And if there's a week 1 to week 2 progression that I really want to see from TSM, it would actually be more from Spica. And I think it's also because he has such a hard job on this team in particular, playing the translator role many times for his support and mid laner. As a dual language speaker, I think it just puts an extra tax on what he needs to do as a jungler.
That is just kind of the constant thing that we'll be having to check in on, especially because in several interviews when appearing on things like Hotline League, making sure to be reserved in even his personal expectations for this squad. It'll take time for them to synergize. We're here in week two, taking to the Rift for the first time for these two teams of the day, as most of FlyQuest gathering around here, but will be going back. But definitely tracking to see how Spica can make an impact early on the Lee Sin, looking for those plays.
Yeah, so far, the ward on TSM's blue buff is going to be matched by the ward on FlyQuest blue buff, so both junglers are going to have pretty good knowledge of where they start. I'd actually say the Jarvan early gank is slightly more potent than the Lee Sin early gank, so a bit of a wash, but we'll see if either jungler can remain undetected.
All right. Trying and going under the guise of the information offered through that early warding here, but Jose de Oro starting over on his red as those are now going to spawn. You can see the bot lane for TSM looking to go ahead and match them down there, and want to see where Spica brings that pathing early for that impact to try and get someone like Tactical ahead if you can launch off of some great lockdown from someone like Shen Yi.
Yeah, both junglers going top to bot as well. Even though there wasn't vision directly onto Jarvan, it's quite easy to surmise where he started based on the fact that Ornn was late to lane and the fact that the blue buff wasn't touched on FlyQuest's side of the jungle. So not much to note of early, other than the fact that Huni can probably play pretty aggressive from like 2 minutes 30 on, since that's going to be a timing where Jarvan would not be top.
Ornn duty quite classic when it comes to prescribing how that early game is going to go in laning, focusing on later on, get those ornaments online, and right now try and offset any pressure that but down in the bot lane, we already get some action. Tactical, ignited, flashes away. Both HP bars brought down low, but they're safe.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised that TSM was in that position. The Tahm Kench Jinx is just going to be stronger, especially when they have a level advantage. I mean, any duo would be stronger when it's 2 level 2s to 2 level 1s, but being in range of that engage and having to burn multiple flashes is a very good start to the lane for FlyQuest.
And a nice scrap over in the mid lane as well. Tukoi getting a little blasted himself, but has some of that sustainability through the potions. Both sides of that equation utilizing those to be able to stay into that lane a bit longer. But we were talking so much about Tactical and Shen Yi trying to go for the play. It's nice to see that aggression on the opposite side.
Yeah, it actually looks like Victor got a lot of really good trades on it to Kui there, and you can see he's actually freezing the wave at the halfway point there and forcing the Zoe into the early recall. A lot of times when trying to do that, the Zoe can actually out-trade the enemy mid laner, especially if Zoe can get like an Ignite drop off a minion or something. It gets even more obnoxious, but that's very advantageous early laning for the Victor side based on how I've seen that matchup play in the past.
And off of that advantage, you could even see the way Huni was rotating through the jungle, make sure to use a good old bloom, try and seek out any information on the enemy jungler as possible. So you know that Jose de Oro is hovering over on that bottom side. Kumu getting chunked down here as well, a bit over the top. A nice wave to be finished off here by Huni.
Yeah, he doesn't need to push it quickly, actually. He'd love if that could trim the wave a little bit more, but we have a Jarvan sighting in the bot lane.
Shenyi running into a little bit of trouble. Saw the Abyssal dive from Aframu. A long distance lock isn't going to be anything for the big old catfish to worry about. And Jose de Oro here for additional assistance if necessary.
Yeah, not much necessary, though. He got a pretty nice early Jarvan clear. Full top to bot. Takes the Scuttle Crab so he can recall on a pretty powerful item there in Pickaxe. So he'll have more combat power than Spica if they end up meeting. Spica here, I think, just to let the wave crash for Huni and maybe even get a play. Dive would be rather ambitious.
Now walk right over that ward, so Kumo knew it was coming, locked in and stunned out. And on the opposite side, Jose de Oro is here for the lock-in, knock up onto Huni, a burn onto Spica. First blood going over to FlyQuest. Jose de Oro taking it.
Ooh, that was very forced by Spica and Huni. I'll have to watch it again to see if there was a critical cooldown they missed, but generally diving a cloth armor Ornn like that is very dangerous. And bot.
Oh, Shenyi goes in for it. Flash is used. The Drowsy landing onto Shenyi. The burst is good.
No flash.
Heal in response. Takui finishes off.
Afrobu and Johnson with more early lane plays, capitalizing on the flash being down already. And you don't traditionally think of Tahm Kench as this aggressive laner, but the current iteration of Tahm Kench with that W engage range absolutely can be. And because of what they built early, they're able to capitalize on it here.
Watched a lot of Tahm Kench from Aframu on his stream during Champions Queue as well, so he's definitely warmed up coming into this matchup. Johnson and Aframu's reuniting after times parted has probably been one of the most exciting storylines of FlyQuest in general, and seeing how they can capitalize upon that previously established synergy to bully out some of these enemy laners.
All right, let's watch this dive one more time. So they stack a wave, they get Kumo under turret. Huni waits for the stun so they can get... Maybe the Lee Sin Q didn't land. I'd have to watch it again in slow motion, but again, an ambitious dive, especially because if Jarvan is there, at least one of you is going down on the back end. Redactin hadn't even shopped, so his damage wasn't particularly that high. And then Takui finds a nice roam timing, as Zoe's can often do, and makes it count.
You know that jungler is on top side. You know that he's not going to have the opportunity to even out the numbers game in that engage down bot. So FlyQuest, nice opportunity to capitalize upon that, bringing a 1K gold lead for themselves at 6.5 minutes. That means the Drake has spawned, Cloud Drake, for us to kick things off in this game. Some vision established on the outskirts of the mid lane, but we're just now starting to see that sweep through. Jose de Oro making his way through the tri bush, sweeping it away, and Spica is nearby over on the Krugs as well. But lots of rotations from Takui between mid and bot to do exactly what you expect to find those opportunities.
Yeah, because if that's just a farm trade matchup in the mid lane, Victor is going to win out eventually. Once he can get his Hex Core upgrade on his Death Ray, it's very easy for the Victor to get shoved. But until that point, Takui can play pretty aggressively, get little timing windows, and then make things happen. He got the kill for the bottom lane, and then he also bought them time to get that dragon.
Great play off of that intel, going and making sure to secure the vision, take it away. And there you go. FlyQuest still extending their advantages, not just within gold, but objective control across the map. You can see the pings in response over on that top side, and even the control ward in that pit. But still some time before we see that Rift Herald action not spawning for another 15 seconds.
Yeah, and something that I want to pay attention to with the Rift Herald is really just what's the state of this bottom lane and when are they going to be roaming up? Because with that Jinx and Tahm Kench timing right now, that's timed up with the Rift Herald start, and the Aphelios needs to catch the wave. So they could think to start it over that, or they can just keep fogging back and forth in the river until they feel like it's a good time to go up.
And that's what Aphromu is alluding to, maintaining his position in that pixel over in the Riverside. But now knows that he's got to make his rotation down because Shenyi is also going across some of these wards. They drop the control so he can offset that vision that was acquired by FlyQuest and move a bit more freely across the map. But you do have to be careful about that run-in with that opposing support here.
Yeah, especially when you're up against an Aphelios. If you try and move your bottom lane up to Rift Herald without having what's called like tempo on the Aphelios, so the wave would be pushing into Aphelios rather than Aphelios being at the turret, he's going to get like 300 to 500 gold off the turret. So, like, right now is definitely not a Rift Herald timing for FlyQuest. I think Jose Dueto is just trying to play defense to make sure that TSM doesn't take it on a Renekton push timing. But I don't necessarily think this would be a timing for FlyQuest. If anything, it's a timing for TSM to try and take it because they have the bot lane move.
And that's what they're going to try to do. Spica starting it up slightly, but knows that Jose Deodo is likely still in the area. Shenyi making his rotation through as well as tactical. So that early firepower here, ready for the 5-man collapse onto this objective for TSM.
Might see a fight.
Does Jose Deodo try and initiate this?
Everyone's
Jake
here. It's
Ford, who you look to go for. Akuma also from the top side, going and throwing down the Oran Horn. Even the flashes directly into the level of impact. Cataclysm gets the lock even more. A trade of Huni for a trade of Jose Deodo means this is complete.
Really interesting series of events right there. So TSM thought they had enough time to kill the Rift Herald because their bot lane moved first and they had the Renekton there first. But since FlyQuest decided to fully move up their bottom lane, they were just waiting for everyone to get there, and there's a split-second thing. If this Herald was dead 2 seconds earlier, the bottom lane's not there to fight. But Kumo notably leaves the wave so he can get the angle for this Ornn ultimate, and everyone can engage together. Even though Shenyi does interrupt the Jarvan EQ, it's just not enough with the Ornn Horn and the Zoe Drowsy coming in over the top.
And with both of these teams kind of indexing into that strength in team fighting, knowing that Kumo can make that rotation around and set up very nicely with that angle is what you want to see from the side of FlyQuest against TSM here.
Yeah, things are looking very good for FlyQuest at this juncture, but we're going to have to pay attention to where this Herald is used, because if Spica can get a successful gank off in a side lane and possibly full break a turret, I'd say particularly for an Aphelios or a Victor, that's what's going to make the most difference. The easier Herald usage is for the Renekton, but at this point, I don't necessarily think the Renekton snowballing is something that can win them the game, and they're going to need their carries, but it is also a more guaranteed use of gold for it.
And that Renekton, speaking of, just going to be put on that duty with Ornn, down flipping towards that bot side, and unlocking officially these support players. Now you know that Rift Herald is on the horizon. You want to be able to match wherever it could potentially lock down. And FlyQuest moving into enemy jungle territory. Wave pushed up by Johnson onto this turret. 11:20 soon enough on the clock means plates are still good, but TSM trade out on the bot side to get one for themselves.
Yeah, they're going to get a full turret of gold here. It's going to split a lot of the plate gold from the Aphelios towards the Lee Sin and Renekton. It'll still be the first turret. However, because it was pretty much a big map split, I think Johnson's going to get a good chunk of plates himself. We'll see how the gold pans out when this is all said and done.
And Johnson still left to his lonesome there top. You saw the initial rotation from Fly, but make sure to keep that pressure across both of those lanes with TSM's priority down here. Bot getting the second charge, though, off of that Herald onto the tier 2 is a really great spot to see from them with that advantage here.
It is. If they can make a return trip to that lane, it's going to be really beneficial. But as kind of the losing team at the moment, I think it's going to be pretty difficult for them to get there. I like that Huni did push Johnson off the turret there. I'm kind of all over the place here, apologies, but it's Kraken Slayer for Johnson, which is really important as the next Dragon is spawning, and FlyQuest has a team that really wants to group around Dragon and force fights, so they should be able to get good position for this Drake.
That Drake is up. Jose Deodo is on it. TSM is not. So FlyQuest, while doing everything they can to make sure they have as much security and firepower for the pending potential fight, they don't actually have to do it, stacking up the second one for themselves. Yeah,
they're now in a pretty comfortable position. Obviously, there's still a lot of League that can be played, and the engage from the Rakan and the Lee Sin is going to be a high threat for the rest of it, but getting the first Mythic on their AD carry, having Kumo kind of through the early laning phase without too much bad happening, and then also having the Zoe being ahead of the Victor, they're pretty happy with the game state right now.
Right in the jungle, though, Shen Yi finds himself on the opposite side of Jose Deodo and friends. Cataclysm followed up by Afromu. That's a kill onto the enemy support.
Oh, that's gotta be so much nicer for FlyQuest on top of what was already there. Taking control of the red buff. Kumo is even very close to getting this turret for himself. This is on the edge of becoming a rout.
Kumo okay with not getting any extra plate action or turrets if he was left to his lonesome, but finding the opportunity on that top side. FlyQuest extending the goal just a little bit more, 1.4. And TSM having to reset right now. Venturing into the enemy jungle, Jose Deodo right here at his red, and Spica knows it. Throws down the Q, wants to contest for himself, so Jose just lets him be. Kayado is also nearby with Huni. Kumo could potentially be a target.
He's got to make sure to keep his health up as much as possible. Allow Jose and Afro to arrive.
Zoning off Jose as much as they possibly can. Flash away.
Ambitious.
Flag and drag in. Activated the Dominus here. Next knock up from the Ornn Horn. Kumo continues to go in to try and find a little bit of safety, but the return from Afromu is good here. So TSM not necessarily going to want to continue for that more. Flash forward by Takoi and Afromu. Goes for the abyssal dive once more. Huni is now separated. Tries to slice and dice away. The damage is too good.
Got him.
Spica is still here though, but he can't do anything about it. Another flash forward. That's a Zoe. Just endless opportunities to do so. And the rest retreat.
The Tigers, that was a 3v4. And FlyQuest won it that whole time. Johnson was getting solo turret gold for himself, so he's now 1,500 up against the opposing Aphelios. This game is even closer to becoming a rout, and it's crazy what's happened with FlyQuest so far in this year. They win a couple close Enchantress Smite top games, and there were 4 undefeated teams coming into this week. FlyQuest is the only one remaining so far today. The other 3 2-0 teams all lost. So if FlyQuest wins this, they'd actually be atop of the standings alone in first after 3 games.
And I feel like it was so difficult to anticipate if they would be able to follow up on that 2-0. Not only because of the nature of this league, as we see the Jinx Rocket go down, but not going to connect on anyone, because everyone taking a game off someone else. Immortals taking down 100 Thieves earlier, but also because when you go for such a unique strategy, what happens when they go on a more traditional comp? And it feels like a lot of what they have learned throughout lock-in, trying to get more on the same page, not going for engages onto different individuals within team fight, not as present here, and been shoring this up more and more throughout time.
Yeah, they seem to be approaching this in a very calm manner. Also, last week in their game against Golden Guardians, they were down 5,000 or 6,000 gold, but the whole time they had Johnson ahead of the enemy AD carry, and they've just displayed strong team fighting fundamentals. I think that's something that is transferable between the Smite top strategies that work and the composition they're playing here. If that Zap landed, Tactical is probably burning Flash, but they're still looking to open up time for this Rift Herald mid lane. So yeah, absolutely tracking how well they play as a team, front to back, coordinating team fights. If they do that well, I think this game is in the bag.
And with the difficulty that FlyQuest has had in previous seasons, it is a nice breath of fresh air for them to have some familiar faces, but bringing in some new blood to spice things up a little bit. They gotta worry. Takoi Emperor Big got the Mythic across almost everyone except for the support. Wow. That's it. You go to sleep, into the grave, right under the turret. Don't even need the rocket. Another one for FlyQuest.
Of course, he burns 2 summoner spells right before he dies. It's like the false hope ends up costing him even more.
Oh, God. And FlyQuest can just bully him out. Saying, Shen Yi, what are you doing hanging around this turret? This is ours easily. Got the Rift Herald to drop down, too, which means they'll get an additional charge. Because without Tactical nearby, the remaining members of TSM will have some difficulty holding this up. They do try to get the trade with Kaiduo going over towards top so he can eliminate that turret and offset this pressure. But look, another charge there for Shelly too.
Getting that mid tier 2 down before even their tier 1 is down is a huge boon. And the Dragon up right now, they haven't had time to reset. So it's slightly scary right now starting up the Dragon just like this, but they have enough control of the jungle. It doesn't look like TSM's going to contest at all.
Nope, and they know Kaduo is top, does have the Unleashed teleport at this point in time, so you are thinking
Tactical,
about those
no
things.
sums.
Instead, another Ornhorn drop through for a Tactical. Doesn't have any of that escapability. Knock up after knock up, knocks down. Tactical out.
So, this is definitely looking like one team who is very much on the same page, and one team who is on a lot of different pages of different books. And it was a fear of this TSM team coming into the year that could be a possibility. They take 2 LDL players from China, not strong English speakers. We have Tactical and Shenyi, mixed language bottom lane, not playing well. And really, they're all over the place on the map. It's one fish in a lane, just getting picked out of the barrel over and over again. This is actually really looking like a 2-0 team versus an 0-2 team. So those records are not lying to us based on the strengths of the team so far this game.
I feel like FlyQuest wouldn't pick fish out of the barrel. They strike me as vegetarians, and they're always trying to save the world together.
It's not a fish factory. It's like humane, sustainable fishing. They're out on a boat.
They got the good dreams when they're having their little fishy sleepies in the water.
Yeah.
I like it. And I'm loving what I'm seeing from FlyQuest in recent games, too, because of that level of coordination. And really waking them up on Summoner's Rift time and time again. Whereas TSM, you do ask that question, okay, when do we see that kind of gelling together finally? Cooney taking a bit of damage over here. Jose Odo's making his rotation through the side, too, so they can just back him off, and they've got a little bit of time to burn some more of this wave.
FlyQuest has done a very good job so far this game, taking the opportunities when they're there, but also not overcommitting. I think there's a different version of Jose Dueto who flash ults there onto Huni trying to get something out, but he saves it because that's not how they win this game. They win this game by getting the Infernal Soul, setting up as 5, being first to a spot, waiting for TSM to walk in, and then just killing them with their better front line and better backline damage. So they just need to have patience here, waiting for this Infernal Soul, maybe even getting good enough vision control and going for an early Baron, but they will win this game around objectives.
Knowing when to exert that patience and when not to go too hard is one of the strengths of Jose Deodo as they start up this Baron. Seeing him in past seasons, even before coming to the LCS, highlight clips of him on the Evelyn, sometimes it's having that tempered moment, but we're actually getting the burn down. They're committing to it. TSM's making their rotation through. Are they going to try and go for a fight off of this? Kumo goes in, gets rooted, knocked up once more. Quickness to get Chenyi back into protected territory. Teleport directly into the center. Cataclysm thrown up, and Jose Deodo has to get out of there with the flash, but it's okay. FlyQuest here. Don't lose a single member. Take down Tactical again and get the Baron.
Just a really nice overall sequence there by FlyQuest. They had good vision in the jungle before they started up the Baron. They take it easily, and then they turn for a fight. And you can just see the mass of their gold lead as well. Kumo got hit for the entire fight, still didn't die. But we're going to see this one more time as TSM is trying to check. They were maybe a little late to go in, but they can't check blindly because they are up against an Orange Jarvan who can engage at the snap of a finger. So Spica almost gets blown up by Zoe on the side. The Ornn ultimate only hits one, but Jose Dueto's combo, as well as the Zoe paddle start, looked like it blew up the whole team. It was just one in a flash, but a lot of things disappeared when that connected, and they are in total command of this game.
As we get a continuation of the engages that have worked so well, Johnson goes golden, teleport from Kaiduo to try and get a good death ray down. Johnson with a flash in return, has the autos that are going to do those heavy hits though to take down Spica, and the rest of FlyQuest are in pursuit. They do have to worry about the low HP of their ADC, but they still take the support. Jose Deodo with the flank around to get the knock up, and the rest of the team has finally arrived as well. A good old bubble to get a good chunk down onto Huni, brings his HP bar down to 50%, and Kumo taking the tower so they can get this Baron empowered wave to finish off that tier 2. Not going to connect with the Ornhorn on this one. Aphromoo flashing forward to see if he can get a tongue slap onto somebody, but in the end it's still an overall victory for them as they pressure into the base.
We're only 22 minutes in, and it looked like they were one Jarvan ult on a group away from just ending the game. TSM's gonna try something desperate.
And they know that they've already gotten a decent amount of poke down and burst. Spica connects, but not really a very safe opportunity to move in on that.
Oh,
Rousey also
gonna hurt.
going to sleep, and you see the E come in from Jose Deodo. Targets 3 with a Cataclysm. Uni, can you swing away as the Relented? We're looking at you to offset the rest, but Tactical gets a nice kick onto Kumo. So 3 taken away for Fly, 3 for TSM. It's a bloodbath.
Whew, that was definitely the bloodiest fight we have seen, pushing the limits a little bit as FlyQuest was low health, retreating towards the spawning Infernal Soul. Tactical clutched that fight really hard, to be completely honest. He had the white gun, got a ton of chakrams going, was at a sliver of health, and is the one who ended up cleaning this one up. But remember, the Ornalt is down at the start of this fight because of what was tried previously, and we got to cut away from this because Huni was trying to stop that Infernal Soul, and it did not go well.
Oh no. The crocodile goes down. And that means that this is Soul going over to FlyQuest. It's looking pretty good for them. Almost 8K gold lead. Yeah, the last fight went even, but they're still winning across the board. TSM are here for an attempted contest, though. Takoi feels like he ain't never missing a shot. To let everybody follow up, Super Mega Death Rocket lands onto 2, but they're tanky enough and enough of sustain available to them as well. But the zoning right now is unreal. Look at that. Spica, just a couple shots. He can't be in it anymore. Knock up onto Shen Yi, but that's the support and enough distance just to say, okay, we want to make sure we secure this Drake, and we got it.
Takoi has been incredible this game. He doesn't have a CS advantage on Victor, but that's because he's been making plays everywhere on the map. He was able to get enough control of the lane in the mid game to make roams. He's just completely controlling the space that FlyQuest has vision for. It's very hard to check spaces against Zoe as the team is behind, but he's landing everything. And here's the final fight.
The flash and the charm from Shen Yi goes Drowsy. Can't even fall asleep yet. They say no dreams for you, buddy. We're just putting you right down as soon as we possibly can. Spica trying to get a little bit of safety, but there's no safety when FlyQuest has your number, baby. Trying to punch them tickets. Huni already expelled his ultimate. Every single time Takoi goes in, he said, "This is my dream territory." FlyQuest pressuring, not even 25 minutes yet, chat. We're already knocking on the doors. Huni with the last stand right there in the back. Rocket slicing through nobody because there's not a single phase left. Shen Yi coming up. And on the clock right now, FlyQuest remain the only undefeated team in the LCS.
Wow. That's a game that'll bring smiles to FlyQuest fans, that's for sure.
Oh my lord. So I loved last week in the crazy kind of I don't want to say it, but cluster craziness, right? I love it though, also seeing just how clean this was. Very straightforward. Yeah,
that's a tale of two teams right here. FlyQuest just on every cylinder, TSM looking fairly lost. And there was some joking in the lobby chat between these two teams with the release of Champions Queue. I mean, Kumo is at 175 points, currently tied for rank 1. It opened